Hello, everybody, and welcome to Books on Stage, the Cloverdale Performing Arts Center. My name is Jude Gibson, and I will be joined today by Ms. Beulah Vega. Welcome to Friday the 13th in Cloverdale. A lot of people are superstitious. I am not one of those people, but Friday the 13th sounds like a really great time to talk about poems about unrequited love. So we've got that in store for us. We've got some crazy monsoon weather, which makes it hotter than the Dickens and just muggy and gross outside. So hopefully you're inside with me and having something cool to drink while we chat with Beulah about her book of poetry. So without further ado, let me bring on Beulah Vega. Beulah, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with me here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So this is a first for me. I always get a copy of the book for Books on Stage so that I can read it and prepare and sound like I know what I'm talking about. And this time, I did not get a book. I got a PDF. This has not been published quite yet. We're very close, yes?
Yes. August 30th is the actual publication date.
So we're just a couple of weeks out. That must be pretty exciting for you. Have you had a copy in your hand and seen it yet?
No, I don't even get an advanced copy until sometime next week.
Oh, so, wow.
I've also seen the PDF. I've only also seen the advanced reader's copy that you have.
That's awesome. It's a first for me. So I'll be having you sign this for me so I can put it on the bookcase behind me and keep a proper copy of the event. So let me give a little introduction and tell the folks at home about you. Beulah is a horror writer, a political poet, and an overworked theatrical artist living and working in Cloverdale's Bay Area. She's an affiliate member of the Horror Writers Association, and her stories have appeared in Nightmare Whispers, Dark Celebration, Infection, The Legends of the Night, Extreme Drabbles of Dread, Haunts and Hellions, and Good Southern Witches. Her poetry has been published in Fey Dreams, The Literary Nest, The Cauldron Anthology, Sage Cigarettes, Resist with Every Inch and Breath, The Tuna Fish Journal. This is just going to go on and on and on and on and on. You are also involved with the Cloverdale Performing Arts Center as a director. I've worked with you there, so full disclosure that you and I do know each other. We've worked with each other before, and also with the Dead Poets Society and Players in Pandemic. We've done quite a few things. And what I like about your work is that you specialize in giving a voice to those traditionally marginalized in literary and performing arts. Beulah, anything else you want to add to that jam-packed announcement?
I don't think so, although I should probably cut a whole bunch of those out. Read, apparently.
What I find is so interesting is it talks so much about horror, and then I've got a PDF of unrequited love poems here. So from one side of the spectrum to the other. How long have you been working on the saga for the unrequited?
There are some poems in here that I started writing about 4 years ago. The book was very different then. I've lived a lot of life in 4 years, oddly. So this actual publication, the format you see it in now, I think I started last January, not this January, so a little over a year and a half.
And you've done how many books of poetry have you done at this point?
This is actually my first book of all mine, of poetry that's all mine.
Gotcha. Okay. But it's not your first rodeo for sure. How long have you been writing?
So I started writing back when I was younger, and I wrote poetry and short stories all the way through college, junior college, all the way through junior college before I started on my 4-year. And I got a poem published in the JC's literary thing. And then I stopped writing because I started doing more theater. And you do have an idea how much time theater takes up.
Yeah. It's a
So,
minute.
yeah, a minute. And then I started again about 4 years ago, on and off, and I didn't really just like sit down and be like, okay, if I'm going to do this writing thing, I'm going to do this writing thing until the pandemic hit. And since March of last year, I've had over 30 works published.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I've joined the Horror Writers Association, and just today I was approved for the Poets and Writers and all that weirdness.
So you filled up all your free time.
But I didn't have free time. I was still doing theater and working full time. I was an essential worker.
The things we do for fun, huh? Gotta love when art takes over our everything. What would you like to tell us about this particular book of poetry? What was the inspiration here?
Let me see. What was the inspiration? I had a brilliant analogy for it the other day. Essentially, the inspiration is that I am crap when it comes to picking men. Uh, you know, I'm sure other people can relate to being crap when picking a partner. And you're laughing because you know my ex, who's a great guy and was one of my proofreaders for this, which is hilarious. He would read poems about himself. He'd be like, I'm a jerk. Like, you are a jerk.
Oh, poor dude.
I know. But yeah, so I was working on this book and another book at the same time, and the other book I haven't finished yet. And that one's almost all political poetry. That one's called The Rising of an American Rage. So it didn't feel like I should merge those poems with poems about unrequited love.
Yeah.
So, and this was the one that I had honestly, the most material for first to start shopping around.
So
Yeah.
you didn't self-publish.
I did. I just published fake car publishing.
How was that process for you, doing all that part of it?
It was surprisingly easy in the sense that I had already Fake-Core had already published one of my short stories and had accepted another one at that point, and had already published 6 of my poems in a couple of their different anthologies, so they knew my work. And they put out an open call for manuscripts, and I'm like, hey, you guys know me. This is what I wrote all by myself. And they're like, cool, we'll publish it. And I'm like, really? Okay. So that's kind of how that went.
So do you see that this is a different career path for you, or is this something you do in the copious amounts of free time between your 40-hour-a-week work and the 120 hours a week you spend at the theater?
It's definitely not a career path in the sense that you don't really make money publishing. I'm sure you know, it's just one of those things. Sometimes you get paid, sometimes you don't. Sometimes there are royalties, and those royalties are like $1.50
Right.
for 3 months. It's something I do, and I am, of course, a member of the Horror Writers Association, which is a professional association, which I was amazed that I qualified for. So that was amazing. And so it's not like it's a hobby, and it's not like I don't do it seriously, because I do it seriously. It's just it's yet another thing that I do full time, along with theater and actual work.
An actual work. Yeah, I know that one. Would you be willing to read a little bit from the manuscript for us tonight?
Sure.
That would be awesome. Cool.
I will start. My manuscript just fell apart. I probably should have stayed with it. I'm going to start with a poem called Meeting Gabriel. And I'm not going to give any preface to any of these poems. So if you want to know some of the story behind the order they're in, you're going to have to buy the book. Sorry. Okay. Meeting Gabriel. The other night in the darkened parking lot of the Temple of Thespius, I met an angel. No gossamer being of light, but a corporeal man. An old gray hoodie replaced his halo. Cigarette smoke formed his wings, the flare of the glowing cherry, forming a puddle of radiance around the lips the color of communion wine. He took a drag, pulled the cigarette from his mouth, and threw the exhale of nicotine and humid breath into the frigid night air, looked up and saw my worshipful aspect. My eyelids forgot how to blink as raw lambent sensuality baptized my awestruck gaze. Was he Lucifer, first of the fallen, prince of temptation, the radiant morning star? His iridescent moonstone eyes had the softness of the wind blowing a dandelion, seed by delicate seed across a barely bending prairie. Compassion as deep as the night sky in a ghost-filled desert, and peace like the first sinking into a hot bath after hours of winter frigidity. No evil dare corrupt this man. His thick, dark brows furrowed over a straight patrician nose as his tanned, muscled forearm, accentuated by the soft gray cotton, rolled to the elbows despite the numbing night air, and long, sun-browned fingers gently flicked the ash from the still glowing cigarette. The ash fell as smoldering drops of holy water onto the dark pavement. I saw in his look shock, sparking across cloudless gray-green eyes. Perhaps a moment, perhaps eternity, passed as his eyes looked through mine, and then he looked away, leaving me to wonder, what did I do to shock an angel? Was it that I could see him for what he truly was, or that he could see a sinner like me at all? And then I'm going to read a poem called Why I Don't Call When I Should. I don't know how to tell you that you were the voice in my head, giving the encouragement my poor damaged psyche never could. You were the muscles contracting my weakened lungs, the blood beating in my damaged heart, the animus I lost when I first failed to thrive. I can't risk telling you that you were the glow on my eastern horizon and that I didn't know what to do with your kindness, with your love. Because my world has always been intentionally dark, and your kindness is blinding. And, sorry, they're poems, so you know, they're short. And I should mention. This one's called What's Wrong with Us? Nothing. It's nothing. I say it when you ask what fascinates me in opaque glass while you drive too fast past what I find truly beautiful, and when you answer too slow when I ask, do you love me? Nothing. It's nothing. You were market offhand when I wasn't listening to the excitement you wanted me to share with you, and when I tell you that you never show real emotion. Nothing. It's nothing. It's a million small pieces, a Lego wall of indifference, apathy between us. We don't examine it too closely, it might fall. We might step on a piece and puncture our comfortable stride. Nothing. It's nothing. It's no thing. It's everything.
Wow.
Meh.
Meh. See, this is part of you that I don't know. I've read some of your horror stuff. I've read other things, but I've never been exposed to your poetry. So this is a different side of you that I think is quite remarkable. Reading through these, I mean, a lot of these could be anybody's broken heart. I mean, it speaks to you. It transcends just from your pain into a knowable pain by others. And I think that's part of why I love poetry, is because it can make you do that. But it's quite a difference to go from horror stories to poetry. It seems kind of a swing to me. But yet again, I've had horror published and I also write poetry. So I guess I understand better than what I would think. Um, who inspired you as a kid growing up? What kind of books and poems did you start off reading?
Did I start off reading?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so my favorite authors when I was younger, I loved The Egypt Game by Zilpha. I forget. Look it up. It's called The Egypt Game. People will be able to look it up. They have Google. Um, and I loved The Bridge to Terabithia, which was the first book that ever made me cry. I think to this day it's the only book that's ever made me cry.
Wow.
Uh, yeah. And then when I was younger, poetry wise, I read a lot of Poe and Rossetti. And then as I got older, I started reading a lot more Neruda and Lorca. And now I'm reading a lot more contemporary poetry. And like Natalie Diaz is like my hero at the moment.
I'll have to make note of that. You mentioned Neruda. Did you read his poems in English or in Spanish or in both?
So here's the thing about my Spanish. My Spanish is what you would use if you wanted to get slapped in polite company.
Oh.
Uh, um, so I've read Neruda. Well, I've read all of his stuff in English, and I've read a few of them in Spanish. I'm actually reading a book right now that has side-by-side translations by modern poets of the Latinx community's poetry.
Mhm.
And there's obviously poetry by Neruda and Lorca in that. So that's really fascinating seeing how they're translating it and like how much of it I actually get when I see the English beside it.
I have that with Neruda. I have one side is English and the other side is Spanish. So, and that was why I asked. That was the first book that someone had gifted to me, and I went, "Oh wow, this is cool." And so
Yeah.
I would try and piece together my Sesame Street Spanish because I grew up in Los Angeles, and Sesame Street came out in Spanish right after it came out in English. So that's where I got my Spanish from for the most part. But fascinating. So what do you read now? I see you post a lot about books on social media and different things that you're delving into, and you really seem to have a broad range of interests.
Haha, my ruse is working. I uh, so I this year I'm trying to read a book of BIPOC poetry every month, like, by current poets, living poets. Which is how I found Natalie Diaz, Ada Limon, who's fantastic, and Ocean Bong, who his book Night Sky with Bullet Holes is it's shattering and affirming all at the same time. Um, and then in terms of like book books, uh, I just whatever's kind of around. I just bought Mexican Gothic. I haven't started it yet, but I'm super excited for it. Um, yeah, stuff.
Stuff, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of stuff. Um, when you were writing the poetry, now this happened during COVID, but we've been open, we've been closed, we've been moping, if that's even a word, partially open, partially closed. What type of scheduled? I mean, was this just like a core dump of stuff, or was these pieces of poetry that you'd been working on for a while that you just gathered and put into a book, or was it painful stuff that you processed and put on paper during the Corona shutdown?
No, honestly, most of the stuff that's in this particular book is at least a year old. So most of it predates COVID. The caveat is regarding my recent Facebook post is only a couple months old, and the titular poem Saga for the Unrequited was written specifically for this collection. But for the most part, there were other like chapbooks I was trying to put together, and they just weren't fusing. And what I did is there's this axiom in writing of once you've found the best line you've written, erase everything else and write up to that best line. So I kind of did that in terms of books. So I just pulled the best poetry that seemed to flow together from all these different chapbooks, and I'm like, this is just not working, and put them into one, and suddenly it works. So yeah.
So what's next? More poetry or more horror, or is there something else?
Let me see. I have, what is up next? I have definitely more horror coming out. I have a book coming out, I think next week. I don't know. I'm just in it. That has a continuation of a series of stories I've been writing about my nieces, as you know, as they actually are, and not as a human disguise as they like to use in the real world. And then I also have 2 horror stories coming out next month. I think one's coming out in October. That one's fun. It's about Tessie, the Lake Tahoe monster. And yes, it's a LGBTQ love story involving Tessie. Yes.
Well, that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, it's weird. You would think that would. Oh wait.
You'd think somebody would have jumped all over that. And who's publishing that one? Where can we find it?
That one is being published by I think it's called Weak Cryptid. I'm not 100% sure, but I can find out and I can let you know. That one, I just sent back the second set of edits on that one. So it's at least a month and a half out from being published. So it's not even at the pre-order stage yet.
How's that process for an author, the edits and the rewrites and the back and forth? What kind of trauma does that put you through?
With me, it actually doesn't. I know. So my grammar is horrendous. My class in school was famous for being the grade, every grade we were in, that every teacher decided they were going to teach us grammar and just gave up. I don't know what the disconnect was. I don't know what went wrong where, but yeah. Even those of us who were in like the advanced programs of everything else, I have no idea what a colon does, or a semicolon, or God forbid a comma. Anyway, so because I know that I already have, that I have grammar issues, and because my brain's not neurotypical, I already know that the world is a little bit different than the way I see it. So when I get edits back, I just kind of think of them as notes from a director of hey, this doesn't quite fit into the play. It's not wrong necessarily, but you need to fix this, this, and this so that the whole thing's cohesive. So actually my theater training has helped a lot in the world of publishing, because there's always that because obviously you get rejected a lot. And in theater, we get lots of practice of being rejected.
Lots of notes over and over and over. Yeah, it's hard enough to put yourself out there in one artistic medium, but to throw yourself into multiple ones simultaneously, that takes a lot. I know I've been busier than a one-arm paper hanger here all through COVID, and doing things digital and Zooming and books on stage from my now office. I got rid of my dining room table and actually built a proper set around myself so I wouldn't hurt anybody. But that's a lot of moving parts and pieces, and each one of them requires some serious concentration. I know, just thinking about it from a theater perspective, learning lines or learning all your actors' lines so that you can direct them and you know what you're talking about. So it's like one part of the brain, and then you're switching to something else. It's like playing the trombone and the piano at the same time or something.
Oddly, I did play both of those instruments. Both of them badly.
At the
Because,
same time.
yeah, well, I tried, but my hands are too little for the piano, so I couldn't actually reach full chords, and my arms are too short for the trombone, so I'd have to just like throw the slide.
Wow.
Have like the little like tied onto it to pull it back, and yeah. So yeah, that was an apt analogy because you can't be done.
Leave it to me. So what's next? What do you want to do to stretch yourself? Is there any different direction that you want to tap into? Are you comfortable with the horror and the poems, or was there some different thing that you wanted to reach out and try and grab?
Well, I actually have a couple non fiction essays coming out as well. One of them is based on sorry, let me start over again. It's a book of essays about women in private spaces. It's about the fact that when men talk about locker room talk, they're usually talking about things that are completely inappropriate. And when women talk about, what they talked about in the bathroom or going to the locker room together, it's usually a whole lot of like hugging and crying and here's some chocolate. And it's a stereotype, but it's not necessarily an incorrect stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have an essay in there about two very different experiences I had with other women in two very similar circumstances that ended very differently. But I'm also and I'm writing for the Arts Courier now. So I'm doing an article for them once a month. And one of my articles just got picked up for the Press Democrat last week, I think. I don't know. And then, of course, Beard of Avon. I have to do Beard of Avon.
You do have to do Beard of Avon. I'm counting on you to do Beard of Avon. I know you folks just started rehearsals on the next upcoming CPAC play, and we appreciate you doing that for sure. So that's got to keep you really, really busy. If anyone that's watching has any questions for Beulah, I don't know if my comment banner is broken. I literally did just build my office, and I had to log in from a new computer, and it required all of these safety steps to where I had to ping Amy, who's on vacation, to get her to log me in. So I'm not seeing a lot of questions popping up. So I'm going to be bad and try and look on Facebook on my phone and see if I can do that without any kind of audio feedback, which is usually the case of what happens. But if you have any questions or comments for Beulah, please feel free to post them at any time and we will answer to you. So where can we find the new book once it comes out? I always do this backward. Saga for the Unrequited. Where can we find this in less than 2 weeks when it hits the streets?
Well, it's up for pre-order now on Barnes & Noble.
Nice.
Yeah, so you can get it through Barnes & Noble. Obviously, it will be available on Amazon as well. It's available in both the ebook format and as a paperback. Barnes & Noble says it's available as a hardback. If that was news to me, so
Wow.
I'm not sure about that.
That's very uptown.
Also, assuming that Delta variant doesn't decide that it hates all of us artists again, I will be doing a reading out of the book, hopefully August 30th at Main Stage, and I will have copies there as well as to the actual release date. So, yeah. If you didn't want to buy from Amazon or Barnes & Noble, you can come do that.
Or you can come to my house and read my manuscript, because this is awesome. I got a manuscript. I just like saying that. Oh, I need a manuscript shelf for behind myself so that I can just save manuscripts, because that just sounds Way awesome, right? Bet you can't say that. Manuscripts behind you, by golly. Well, Beulah, it's been wonderful to chat with you. I thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday the 13th, which as a horror writer, you must be all dressed and ready to head out and hit the town and celebrate. I don't know. It's a scary night. Ooh.
You're freezing. Or I'm freezing. Someone's freezing. You shouldn't have mentioned Friday the 13th.
It's all good. You gotta believe in such things to have anything bad happen. Well, I appreciate spending time with us. That's all we've got time for tonight. I appreciate those of you watching at home for joining us. At the moment, we are going to take a little break from Books on Stage. We are in the process of hiring an artistic director at the Cloverdale Performing Arts Center. So my attention has split into a few different directions at the time. So once we get things settled down a bit, we will pop back on and go live because, hey, I've got an office now. I gotta keep doing this thing. So we appreciate your support. Go get Beulah's books at Barnes and Noble. It's gonna be out there, and we would appreciate you supporting her in everything that she does. Erin Lane is clapping like crazy. I can see that. Thank you, Erin. And we will chat with you all sometime very soon. In the meanwhile, look for Beulah's play that's coming out. Jump onto CloverdalePerformingArts.com and get tickets to upcoming performance. We are open. I'm keeping things at 50% capacity. Not that we had to, but just because I think it's the safest thing for our community, and we will assess that daily before the theater reopens again. So we want to make sure that everybody is safe and in the theater. So thanks everybody for joining us. And until next time, take care. Bye, Beulah.